Thanks for stopping by, everyone. I want you to grab some popcorn, take a seat, because today we're going to be going over my top 10 favorite works of fiction. Um, there aren't going to be really a lot of rules or constraints to this list. We're going to have TV shows, standalone books, series on this list. Some of them, I might have only read the first book in the series. The series might be incomplete itself. Kind of naturally, we're following the one author slash creator rule, just not by choice, but just with how the list turned out. And right before I give you the number one, I'll throw in some honorable mentions, just mainly touching on some genres or mediums that don't really cover with the Big Ten. So yeah, let's jump in. We're starting off strong with the number 10 spot. We got Fall of Giants by Ken Follett. So this is actually the first book in his Century trilogy. I've read two of the three books in this trilogy. The second one, Winter of the World, let me down a little bit, but Fall of Giants, the first one, was absolutely fantastic and exactly what I was looking for. So big shout out to my dad. He recommended this to me based on me getting back into reading and giving him a little taste of my taste and the kind of stuff I was looking for, and he's really big into historical fiction. This is the first historical fiction I sort of read like as an adult, and it kind of hit on all cylinders for me. We've got a massive cast, a bunch of different plot lines that are kind of intertwined, and we're following five families, which include several point of view characters, primarily in Europe at the beginning of the 20th century, right at the sort of outbreak of World War II, the Russian Revolution. Got the fight for women's suffrage, particularly going on in England. We're working with a pretty large, like I said, but really strong cast here across several different walks of life. But you definitely have some players on the higher end of society, and as a result of that, you're really going to get the characters intertwined with history in a way that really works, feels very natural and organic. It's pretty much compatible with real life in the sense that historical figures appear. You could believe that all of this happened, other than the fact that everyone is fictional. And yeah, there are characters that you will love to hate, love to love. Some people sort of in the middle where you might be rooting for them. They make some decisions you're not crazy about. And yeah, little subtle details connecting the whole thing throughout. I felt like this is a period of history I should be more familiar with than I was. And honestly, I think the book was very educational overall. Afterward, it'll inspire you to check out the historical details if you're not familiar with that, and I found everything to be pretty accurate and really portraying all sides of things, even though I would say you can kind of see where the author leans on the political spectrum, but is what it is. For me, that was not a problem. And in the rest of the trilogy, specifically, so the second book follows sort of the next generation of all the families that are introduced. Now, The Winter of the World, the second book, didn't land for me as hard. The first book felt very organic. You really saw everyone sort of complete their arc. And like I said, the tie-ins with the history were very natural. The second book, which follows sort of World War II primarily, as well as the Great Depression in the United States, and some other historical events, the Spanish Civil War was in there. But in general, I kind of felt like we were just stringing the characters along with the history. I sort of was seeing behind the curtain a bit with what the author was trying to do. So I do plan on reading the third book eventually, which I heard is a bit stronger, but the first one, Fall of Giants, definitely a slam dunk for me, and I would love to read some more Ken Follett at some point. I know Pillars of the Earth is his best known work, and a lot of people really like it, so I'll be giving him another shot for sure. All right, next up at number 9, we have Severed Echoes by Anya Dillon. This is a self-published book, first in a duology that I believe is supposed to be completed by the end of the year. Fingers crossed on that, because this first book was not only really gripping, but the reason I love it so much is it plays with the mind. And that's something that I really look for in fiction in general, but haven't really been, I guess I've generally been disappointed with the way it's handled in specifically a lot of science fiction that tries to do this. But here, it's definitely supernatural what's going on. I'm not really going to get into the details of it. I think you have to read it yourself and figure it out. But there is sort of a biological basis. It feels like the author put care into what's going on. But that's just one aspect of the book. It's sort of a big genre blender. Thriller is what I primarily call it. You do see a young woman getting abducted within the first couple chapters, and after that I was gripped, really could not put it down. but plenty of elements of things that I wouldn't typically dive into myself, I guess. A lot of experimental writing, which I thought was really well done and really played into the story. And something that I'd recommend to a lot of audiences that might not necessarily align with my tastes. So yeah, I'd say at least give it a shot. It's a fairly quick read, a little over 300 pages, but it reads a lot faster than that. And I think it's definitely worthy of a lot of attention, especially with the story closing out, hopefully within the next couple months here. All right, number 8 is the first television show entry on the list, and that is Succession, which I would honestly call a perfect television show. Does not overstay its welcome. A very tight 39 episodes, but not a single moment on screen is wasted. Very, very true to life. Incredible cast with very, very good acting. Perfect by every cast member. The premise of the show is we're following the Roy family, the patriarch of the family. Logan Roy is the founder and CEO of Waystar Royco, which is at its core a media company. This family is very, very, very rich, and as you can imagine, live a very different lifestyle than the typical member of civilization in the modern age. And I still feel like we get a very true to life portrayal of the family dynamics, how these people act. And what's interesting is nearly every member of the cast is hateable in their own way, yet they are just so gripping to follow. You'll become attached to them because they are at the very least entertaining. A lot of them are hilarious, but will make you angry each on several occasions. I think it's worth you checking out the first episode at least. I think it's a great introduction to everyone in the cast. You'll get a total taste of what you're in for. And yeah, I think this was a blast to devour this show in under a month. And really, it's not that long, like I mentioned. So, Succession firmly grabbing a spot on the list, particularly number 8. We've got another book for our number 7 spot, and that is The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain, one of my favorite authors, and obviously a giant in the American literary canon. What this book really did for me was give me a very thorough slice of life portrayal of a time in American history that was just absurd for several reasons. And I think Mark Twain, who was obviously alive at the time, understood that and did his best work to paint it just across several aspects of our protagonist, anti-hero-ish Huck, who is traveling down the Mississippi River. Now, his traveling companion is a runaway slave named Jim. And like I mentioned, I believe Mark Twain was trying to paint a picture of the absurdities and injustices of the place and the time period. Now, unfortunately, I think his objective was to identify the ridiculous and unfortunate lack of education of slaves of this time period. But the way he does this is by, rather than making Jim just clearly uneducated, he makes him not very intelligent, which is obviously a flaw of the book, and why I think people might suggest it doesn't necessarily hold up. So would have liked better execution there, of course, but plenty more is satirized as well. I mean, we're running into con men, family feuds, plenty more along the way, and I really enjoyed the character growth and journey of Huck. Huck just wants to chill out, live life on a raft, and he's got this twisted worldview that I think is really core to the book, where we see him go on a character journey where things are made out to him to be the morally right thing to do, and he goes directly against them in good-natured ways. Yet at the same time, in the last quarter of the book, we see a familiar character appear and interface with this Huck that has now seen the world and grown himself. And this character certainly has not. And you see a little pushback from Huck, but at the same time, you know, he is still submitting himself to poor decision making and things like that. The voice really ties into Huck. This isn't written in first person, and yeah, a pleasure to have read it. And I definitely plan on reading some more Mark Twain beyond the adventures of Tom and Huck, both of which I have read already. Actually got another 19th century American work coming in at number 6, and that is Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. Very, very different book than the previous When I was first getting back into reading, I looked up epic Western books because I wanted, a taste of that time period, see what people had done in the type of story format that I like, which is, a big cast, big scope. And I found this one recommended, and then also found that it was pretty universally loved, which made the expectations a bit high for me. I put it off for quite a while, but eventually had to read it, and incredibly glad I did. Fortunately, I can confirm that if you enjoy living and breathing a different time and place in history by just hanging out with a broad and entertaining cast, packed with little bits of existentialism and all different aspects of life, death, relationships, there's pretty much no way you will dislike this book, other than not being into the Western aesthetic, which is valid because a few things are definitely unfortunate about all that, and it was part of what I thought would make it an interesting read and a thing for a nuanced author to inspect and explore, which I think Larry McMurtry did an excellent job of. I think the characterization is off the charts in this book, which is really something I like. It is fairly slow paced and a lot more about hanging out with the characters. And you've got some legendary ones in here. Gus McRae is probably in my top characters of all time. If I were to make a top 10 or top 5 list, I think he'd definitely slot in. But we've got Newt, Lorena, Clara, Woodrow Paul, of course. How could I forget him? Jake Spoon. Rattle them all off, and they are totally fleshed out. Just an absolute blast, an emotional ride, and something I am very, very happy to have read. I've heard mixed things about the sequels, so it is technically part of a tetralogy. The first one written can totally be read as a standalone. Chronologically, comes in third, and from what I've heard, pretty much everything sort of anti-Western about this book. Apparently, a lot of that is sort of lost in the sequels, but to be honest, I'm just too gripped by this cast to say that I will stop here. So eventually, I'll be making it to the sequels, but for now, Lonesome Dove is comfortably sitting at the number 6 spot on my list. Okay, top 5. Let's go. These are the good ones. So I got back into reading because I finished A Song of Ice and Fire by George R. R. Martin, which we will definitely get into later. Spoiler alert. And I was trying to find something to fill that void of obsession, which, whether that was something sort of similar or something I liked just as much. But honestly, I stayed away from this next series. I wanted something a bit different, sort of in terms of setting or premise. And for some reason, I stayed away way too long just because I'd heard of a lot of similarities. I was looking for something fresh. But honestly, the thing that's most similar about this series or this author is just how damn good it is. And that is the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb. So this is part of Hobb's larger Realm of the Elderlings series, which is divided into 5 small series with a chronological order. They intertwine. I've only read the first 2. I actually read the second trilogy first. That's the Live Show Traders trilogy, which is kind of a family drama in a nautical setting. You've got pirates, magic ships, another amazing cast of really complex and realistic people. So I read those 3 books. I just ate them up. Thought, okay, this is something to really, got stuff to chew on in here. I felt like I really grew as a person reading those. Robin Hobb is an amazing writer, really personal, interesting themes. I'm sold, right? Definitely dark and brutal as well, which is something I like. I like things grounded and realistic. And then I went back and did what everyone told me I should have done and read her opening trilogy, the Farseer trilogy, and honestly, it just resonated with me way, way better. And yeah, I was a little afraid at first going in, just because, like I said, everything I'd heard about it sounded like something I'd already got out of A Song of Ice and Fire, or something I just wasn't really into. Single POV first person. The premise was around a royal bastard who's growing up in a castle and can communicate with animals. If you know anything about A Song of Ice and Fire, you know that some of those tropes are definitely in there in various ways. But wow, this was just so relatable in subtle little ways you wouldn't expect in a fantasy book. Perfect coming of age, and I still fell in love with the rest of the cast. So Robin Hobb doesn't overpower her stories with the magic stuff, but when it comes in, it really plays into the themes, and I think what she's trying to do and show. I love the way she writes about animals. I love the way she writes about loneliness. I'll be honest, the world building and scope is not on the level of George R. R. Martin. The plot can be a bit slow sometimes, but that's fine because she's always building up her characters and relationships, and that is 100% the highlight here. So yeah, the Farseer trilogy, the main character's name is Fitz. Two out of the three remaining subseries I have to go through are centered around him and his supporting cast later in life, and I'm really excited to keep going. I highly recommend these. Don't know if it'll work for everyone, like A Song of Ice and Fire might, but she's totally worth a try. You can start with Live Ship, like me, or if you want to read everything in order, and don't want even like the subtlest spoilers about what's to come, just pick up Assassin's Apprentice, Farseer Book 1. It's fairly short for a fantasy book, and join me for the ride. All right, number four, I'll keep it fairly short and sweet, but I definitely have to include this next series because, yeah, I was a pretty big reader as a kid, but I don't think anything ever just took me by storm and made me obsessed like Harry Potter did. Yeah, I won't go on too much about this one. I think everyone not only knows what this one is about, but what makes it so great. I will just say, though, it's worth a reread as an adult for sure. It was kind of sad to pick up Percy Jackson back up and find it didn't really hold up for me. But with this reread, I just cut all these new character building details and still felt the same charm and immersion I did as a kid. I think this is another amazing coming of age story. The books really grow in theme and tone with the characters and the readers. Also die on the hill that Albus Dumbledore is the best wizard in fiction of all time. Sorry, Gandalf fans, it really isn't close for me. But yeah, these are incredible, all-time favorite. I'm not saying you should go read the author's Twitter account. I'm just saying that the books are timeless. So yeah, Harry Potter is an all-time favorite for me. All right, now we're really getting into gush territory with the number 3 spot going to the last TV show on the list, and that is Lost. Yeah, my poster's a little glary, but it is certainly represented on my wall because this show is just so special to me. And I think what made me fall in love with a massive cast, especially when they're all really deeply developed. And yeah, I think the show changed television in its style of doing character deep dives and tying in people's pasts to their current arcs and where they're at in life. And yeah, I know people don't like the ending to this show. I strongly disagree. I love the show from start to finish. I actually think it you know, it certainly has its corny moments, just typical television stuff. But um, wow, so I've watched this show 4 times. I think for the first time when I was in middle school. Since then, I'd say about every 3 or 4 years, I give it a rewatch. This is something that I push on nearly everyone, especially if I feel like a lot of the themes or characters would resonate with them. And we just have so many walks of life represented here, so many different things explored. It's a long show, 6 seasons of several episodes. Yeah, Lost is about a plane crash on a remote island in the Pacific. And by the end of the pilot episode, you're aware that they might be stuck there for a little while. People have ended up on this island and not made it off. And there's some supernatural stuff going on. Plenty of thriller elements that will just have you cliffhangers. You will be nonstop heading to the next episode. And along the way, particularly in the first season, each episode is just a deep dive into one of the members of the enormous cast, and so many strong characters here. John Locke is obviously an all-time favorite for me. I also love Sawyer. I think Ben, when he gets introduced, he comes in a bit later, but one of the most gripping villains, well written, that I have seen or watched. Just tie-ins to big ideas of philosophers and religions, and just everything on such a broad scope. I'm not very good at pitching this series, I guess. It's just something that I beg people to watch, even though everyone loves complaining about endings. But I truly think everything was tied up in a very strong way. Payoffs are there. Yeah, I'm just gonna keep rambling if I try to talk about this series anymore. But yeah, Lost is legendary for me, and I think what formed me not only as a person, but as a consumer of fiction, discovering what I like about storytelling, and it comes in at the number 3 spot. So Lost being the number 2 entry would have probably been a lock for me before this year, but I read East of Eden by John Steinbeck this year, and it is easily my favorite classic book of all time. It is potentially my favorite individual standalone book of all time. I mean, this book is special to me for a few reasons. I'm a California native. This book takes place in the Salinas Valley, primarily Northern California, at primarily the beginning of the 20th century, and it's a sort of parallel family drama. So you've got the Hamilton family, and in a sense, that's sort of an autobiographical, inspired at least, portrayal of Steinbeck's maternal side. John Steinbeck actually does, at least a fictional version of him, appears in the book. But on the other side, you have the Trask family, which is broken and really speaks to a lot of biblical parallels. Steinbeck was an agnostic, I believe, particularly later in life, but you can really feel the fact that even so, his faith has, still been important to him and led him to contemplate uh, family relationships and the concept of redemption in just a beautiful way. I really can't do this book justice in pitching it. This book also definitely gets points because I started reading it on a little trip with my mom out west, and yeah, I think that played into the atmosphere and all of the family aspects of this that really resonate with me. So yeah, this is a beautiful book. Amazing cast, amazing exploration of themes. And yeah, I would also say that the first two chapters were a little bit boring to me, but chapter three is when it won me over. So give it three chapters if it's on your radar, and yeah, I think you'll have an amazing time with this amazing book. All right, before the number one spot, I'll do some honorable mentions. Like I mentioned, this is mainly just going to be sort of touching on genres or mediums that I didn't really get into previously. Science fiction is one, for example, that I'd really like to explore some more. I like the idea of it. I haven't read too much into it or run into some really heavy hitters for me. Now, Jurassic Park, I'll throw out there as one that I'm sure everyone knows about. But for me, while I did find it a little heavy-handed in its messaging, it definitely did challenge me and the way I think about science and technology, and I got to give it credit for that. And who doesn't love dinosaurs, right? I actually preferred the book to the movie by a pretty drastic margin, but the movie didn't really have the nostalgia for me. I didn't watch it in my youth, and I can certainly see why everyone loves it. But the book for me, um, but yeah, in terms of science fiction, I love the way it can explore ideas. Now, I think what it might illustrate a lot of sort of my issues with science fiction and why I haven't delved into it too much is a book I actually just read a little bit of and put down. So, Aurora by Kim Stanley Robinson. I found the first couple of chapters to be incredible. I loved the way the narrator was handled. This is a book about a generational starship that's on its way to humanity's first new home beyond Earth. And I think I actually got a lot more than I bargained for in terms of some really grounded technology and exploration of sort of a romanticized idea and what that looks like in practice. I thought the handling of the narrator was awesome, but it was just so bogged down in the science that I got bored and I put it down. So yeah, I mean, no shot it can make the top 10 if I didn't finish it, right? But an example of some of the stuff I'm sort of looking for and like movies. I didn't talk about movies at all. Mainly because I don't watch a lot of movies. And Good Will Hunting, featured up there, is definitely my favorite movie, but I've only seen it once. It's been a while. I can't really speak to it too much. Yeah, I mean, I think Disney Pixar is great if you want to talk kids movies. Toy Story 3, Soul, I think I'd particularly shout those two out. Sitcoms, I kind of tend to struggle with sitcoms where a lot have started off strong for me and then sort of fell off as characters become sort of caricatures and they get repetitive. See Silicon Valley featured up there. But Studio, I think, is my favorite modern sitcom or actively coming out. I thought that first season was off the charts, and I think it just won an Emmy. So congrats to the studio. Um, Now, yeah, I guess that's it in terms of genres and mediums I didn't really cover. Two other fantasy series that I really love, but I've only read one book of. Got The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. Now, I think in terms of what I look for in terms of messaging and characterization, this book really wasn't as strong for me, but just so immersive. It was like candy. And yeah, I think if we ever get that third book, I'll definitely be continuing on and giving that one a reread because I thought the writing was fantastic. Um, and yeah, an amazing book. Discworld by Terry Pratchett as well is something that I'd really like to get deeper into. I've only read Guards, which I just thought was off the charts hilarious. I think for sort of the similar reasons that I enjoyed Mark Twain's satirical writing. I liked Guards, but this sort of leans into more of the British dry humor that I'm also really into. But again, that's it's only one book, and yeah, those books are fun, but a little less sort of immersive. Even though yeah, I thought the characters were great too. I've tried a few of Terry Pratchett's other books. I read a bit of Mort. Um, what was the other one I started? I can't remember. But point is, I do tend to actually start those and drop them because of the fact that uh, they're hilarious and a good time, but really just not very immersive to me because of how absurd they are. But still, it's still great, and I'd love to read some more. But I don't want to waste any more time. I am always dying to talk about my favorite work of fiction of all time, the number one series on this list. And why don't we jump in? And we're going to close out strong with A Song of Ice and Fire by George R. R. Martin. I was late to the party with the TV adaptation Game of Thrones, watched in 2020. I think I watched the first season over the course of a week, seasons 2 through 7 over the course of a week, and then season 8 it actually took me a little longer just because I was kind of out by that point. But we'll get into that. But um, yeah, as soon as I finished the first season, I was kicking myself for not getting into it sooner. Since then, I've rewatched it at least 5 times from seasons 1 to 6, and it got to the point where I was just so obsessed I could not go back to the source, and found that I loved the book series substantially more, and that's how I started reading again. Yeah, I described the series as sort of a twisted medieval Europe, more than a fantasy series. Obviously, there are magical elements, and those build up throughout the series. But the reason I think this series is just a slam dunk recommendation to anyone is it's really built on its amazing cast of realistic and well developed characters, some of whom are probably just going to be favorites for the rest of my life. Enormous scale, tons of plot lines that naturally intertwine, but in ways you'll never see coming, but never cheap, always earned, always amazing. Yeah, it sort of puts a spin on the romanticism of the Middle Ages and fairy tales by hitting the audience with some really harsh realities, not just about human nature, but how absurd a society like this looks from top to bottom. But at the same time, it does such an amazing job of portraying how, when people are faced with extreme circumstances, it's the true leaders that emerge and can do so against all odds. Honor is a really big theme too. You've got some characters that will live by stone cold principles and die because of it. Some that make a total joke out of it. Some that really struggle deciding what the right thing is to do when they're faced with all these abstract concepts and customs. And don't get it twisted either. It's definitely inspired by real history. But the world building is still so creative and well thought out. Yeah, I've put in way too many hours just deep diving the cultures and the history. And George has a lot of fun playing with how history and what we know about the past is shaped. Dragons too, and executed very realistically, if I can even say that. Shout out Phyllis, whoever you are, because apparently she made George put the dragons in. The writing is beautiful, has the perfect sort of medieval flavor. Every line just does so much for character building, foreshadowing, tons of little details, dramatic irony because you're just so zoomed in specifically to the information that your current POV has. Tons of reread value, and because the series isn't finished yet, there's still so much theory building to do. And yeah, you gotta look at the silver lining. George is obviously really smart. He's also funny and hip, and the dialogue really just can't be beat. Uh, People complain about the downfall of the show when they had to go past the source material. I usually see people talking about the plot points there. For me, the bigger killer is George's dialogue is just such a backbone for the character interactions that really kills it scene by scene. But I'll repeat, the character cast is just really strong. The show might have a reputation of exploiting some of the R-rated content, but believe me when I say George is intentional with everything he does from a thematic point of view. So many different types of people are represented by this cast. Everyone will find someone to relate to. Yeah, the series, it's really well known for its well-earned twists and emotional beats. Those all hit so hard because you will fall in love with the cast. And the real beauty of the series is I can't imagine anyone having the same top 10 main character list, let alone side characters, because there are hundreds. And they all still feel really fleshed out and realistic. It feels like everyone who steps onto the page has intentions, has a soul, and is going to impact the story. And yeah, honestly, this is clearly my favorite entry in the list. I love talking about the series. So you can probably expect some more stuff from me going forward about it. So yeah, thanks for joining me. I figured this would be a pretty good first video and just kind of give a big overview of what I'm into, what my tastes are like. But I still have plenty more to read, plenty more to watch, and plenty of stuff that I want to deep dive into, particularly about some of the works of fiction that were represented here. In my eyes, if they made this list, I want to talk about them some more. So yeah, stick around, hit subscribe. Feel free to jump into the comments and let me know what your top 10 works of fiction are. What you think about some of my choices, what you would have liked to see, and yeah, I'm here to chat with you all. So yeah, this has been Lost Beyond the Wall, and I will see you next time.